So this is going to be a very short lesson. We're continuing our deeds of conveyance, and specifically today, we're going to look at the transfer tax and other government requirements that are associated with recording deeds. And understanding these administrative and financial aspects is honestly just as crucial as mastering the legal intricacies of the deed itself. I mean, they're essential for successfully completing a real estate transaction and ensuring that the chain of title is correct. Now, Georgia imposes a transfer tax on most conveyances of real property. This means that when property changes hands, there's usually a state tax that is associated with that transfer. The tax is based upon either the purchase price of the property or the estimated fair market value of the property. Now, this ensures that the state collects revenue that's proportional to the value of the property that's being transferred. Now, it is important to note that certain types of conveyances are exempt from the payment of transfer tax, and these exemptions are typically defined by state statute, and they can include transfers, say, between spouses in a divorce, or gifts, and these are often the for love and affection deeds, or you can have a transfer to or from government entities. Now, as a legal professional, you'll need to be aware of these types of exemptions to help correctly, complete the necessary forms. Now, we have the PT 61 form, and this is central to the transfer tax process. It is the declaration of transfer tax. Now, it has to be completed electronically for every transfer of real property in Georgia. And this is a mandatory step for every transfer, not just those whose tax is due. Okay. So there is no fee for the electronic filing of a PT 61 form. This electronic submission system basically streamlines the process for the state. Now, after the electronic submission, a physical requirement still remains, and that is a hard copy of the completed PT 61 must also be submitted along with a deed to the clerk's office. Okay. Now, this ensures that the county clerk has a physical record to accompany the deed for processing. Now, even if there is no transfer tax due on the transaction, a PT 61 must still be submitted to notify the taxing authority of the transfer of ownership of the property and its exempt status from the payment of transfer taxes. So this means you cannot skip the PT 61 simply because the transaction is exempt. You must still declare that exemption. Now, it's also vital to understand that while the hard copy of the PT 61 is submitted with a deed, the PT 61 is not recorded in the public records. It is just its purpose is just for the tax declaration and for notifying the tax authority. So it's not for establishing, a public record of the transfer itself. That is the deed's job. Now let's talk about the recording deeds when it comes to public records. This process is fundamental for providing public notice of property ownership. So the deed has to be recorded or filed, I guess we should say, in the public records. And this act of recording is essential for protecting the grantee's interest and establishing a priority of ownership. And that's a concept that we're going to look further into when we get into discussing the recording statutes. But you have to file the deed in the county where the property is located. This makes sure that the local records accurately reflect the property's ownership. So, for example, if a property is in Cobb County, then the deed has to be recorded with the Cobb County Superior Court clerk. Now, the Superior Court clerk for each county maintains the public records for that county. And these clerks are the custodians of all recorded real estate documents. That includes your deeds, your mortgages, your easements, your liens, whatever, okay? And their offices are where the public can search for information about property ownership and encumbrances. Now, let's talk about fees. Because the fee to record documents in Georgia is standardized across the state, and it's calculated according to the number of pages per document. Now, this predictability helps attorneys and paralegals to be able to calculate the recording costs accurately. And it's absolutely essential that the original documents must be sent for recording. All right. Photocopies, not acceptable. They will be rejected. So the recording process is going to require the physical original deed with all of its original signatures, notary seals, everything to be filed with the PT61 and the fee. So that fee that I was just talking about, when you're submitting the documents for recording, you have to include a check to cover those recording fees. And this check is going to cover the per page fee that is required. Now, it may include the total amount of recording fees due for all documents that are being recorded in connection with the closing. So, for example, if you're recording a deed, a security deed, and a power of attorney at the same time, then one check can cover all of the combined recording fees. But again, remember that the PT61 form should not be included in that calculation because that form is not recorded in the public records. It is a separate administrative requirement, not one that's going to become part of the permanent public record book. Now, a second check must be submitted with the documents made payable to the Georgia Department of Revenue to cover any transfer tax that's due on the transaction. Now, this check pays the actual transfer tax to the state. Now, the transfer tax and the recording fees, they cannot be combined on one check, okay? They are separate payments to different entities. One is the Superior Court clerk for the recording fees, and the other is to the Department of Revenue for the transfer tax. And again, they have to be submitted on separate checks. And failure to adhere to that can result in the rejection of your recording submission. Now, a final but very important part to note here is the formatting requirement for recording in Georgia. You have to have a 3-inch margin at the top of the first page of every real estate document that gets recorded in public records. This space is reserved for the clerk of Superior Court for their recording stamps, the books and page numbers, and any kind of official notations they make. If this margin is not properly observed, the document will be rejected and returned to you, and that, of course, is going to cause delays in recording. But I do want to add here, too, it's a critical professional responsibility. So if a deed is faulty for any reason, that means substance or format or whatever, the one who handled the transaction has to make the corrective measures to fix the error. And that underscores the importance of paying so close attention to the detail in the deed preparation and the execution. Because again, errors can range from minor typos like in a name or a legal description to a much more substantive issue like missing a signature or incorrect witnessing, and all of which require diligent correction to maintain that clear chain of title. And again, we'll discuss specific methods for correcting deeds in a later segment. Now, again, I told you this one was going to be very quick. I just wanted to go over and highlight, the administrative and financial requirements that are required in conveying real property in Georgia. Again, remember, you have to have the PT61 form, has to be electronic first, then hard copy goes next. That is not included in your filing fees. All of your filing fees for the Superior Court can be put together on one check, but you still have to pay the transfer tax on a separate check to the Department of Revenue. Again, pay very close attention, keep your 3-inch margin, make sure that everything is good so that you don't get it kicked back. Again, it's just for making sure that everything gets properly documented and it's protected in the public records. And that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.